Last night, I overheard my son dictating my card number to my daughter-in-law. I just smiled, and 50 minutes later, his phone exploded with a message that changed everything. But let me tell you how I got to that moment. It was 3:15 in the morning when I opened my eyes. Not from a nightmare, not from thirst, but from a voice coming from the other side of the wall. A voice I've known for 38 years, since I held him in my arms and promised him he would never lack for anything. The voice of Jalen, my son. He was speaking softly, almost whispering, but in the silence of the night, every word reached my bedroom clearly. At first I thought he might be sorting out something urgent, some problem that couldn't wait until morning. But then I heard the tone. That tone people use when they're planning something they don't want anyone else to know about. I stayed completely motionless. My heart was beating slowly, very slowly, as if my body knew it had to maintain absolute silence to catch every syllable leaving his mouth. And then I heard it with total clarity. "Get everything out, babe. She has over $80,000 stashed there. She's sleeping soundly. She won't realize until morning, and by then we'll have pulled it all." I closed my eyes slowly. Not out of fear, not out of surprise. I closed them because something inside me already knew. Maybe not the exact details, maybe not the precise moment, but the essence of what was happening. That feeling a mother gets when her child stops being the boy she raised and becomes someone she no longer fully recognizes. I heard Tamara's hurried breathing on the other end of the line. I could perfectly picture her in the house I helped them furnish, sitting on the bed, her eyes glittering with excitement at the thought of all that money. Tamara had always been like that from the day I met her. Behind that perfect smile and those kind words, there was something calculating, something that measured every gesture, every visit, every false hug. But a mother doesn't say those things out loud. A mother stays quiet, waits, observes, because pointing out the flaws of your son's wife is opening a wound that never quite heals. So I kept quiet then when I first met her, and I kept quiet now in the darkness of my room as I listened to my own son dictate the numbers of my bank card to his wife. 4, 7, 9. Each number was like a heartbeat stopping for a second. Not because the betrayal itself hurt me, but because it confirmed what I had been denying for months, that to them I was no longer Elara Sterling. I was no longer a mother. I was no longer family. I was no longer the woman who had helped them through every crisis. I was just a bank account with a name attached. The money Jalen mentioned hadn't fallen from the sky. It wasn't a gift or an unexpected inheritance. It represented 42 years of work. 42 years of waking up at 5 in the morning to be on time at the garment facility, where I sewed uniforms until my fingers were practically deformed from the effort. 42 years of saving every cent I could, guarding it in secret, planning a future where I wouldn't have to ask anyone for anything, not even my own son. When my husband passed away 11 years ago, Jalen was 27. He promised me he would never leave me alone, that he would always be there for me, and I believed him. A mother always wants to believe in her son. She always wants to think that all the love she gave for years will return in some form when she needs it. But life teaches you things you don't want to learn. Jalen continued speaking softly with Tamara. He was explaining how to access the ATM, how to make multiple withdrawals to avoid raising suspicion, how to take out the maximum allowed at different times. He spoke with a certainty that chilled my blood. This wasn't the first time he had planned this. It was evident in every detail, every precise instruction. They had been waiting for the right moment, and tonight they thought they had found it. I opened my eyes in the darkness and looked up at the ceiling. A small water stain formed an irregular figure right above my bed. I had seen it every night for the last 3 years. That stain had become a silent companion, a mute witness to my insomnia, my worries, and the nights I wondered if I had been a good mother, or if I had failed at something fundamental. Now that stain seemed to hold an answer. I heard Jalen end the call. "Babe, first thing tomorrow morning, you go and take it all out. I'll stay here so she doesn't suspect anything. We act normal, just like always." Just like always. Those 3 words resonated in my head louder than everything else, just like always. How many times had they acted normal in front of me while planning this inside? How many times had they smiled at me while thinking about my money? How many times had they feigned concern for my health when all they really wanted was to ensure I was still alive and had access to my account? I felt something strange in that moment. It wasn't pain. It wasn't anger. It was something deeper and calmer. It was absolute clarity. Jalen's bedroom door closed gently. I heard his footsteps moving away down the hall, probably heading to the bathroom or the kitchen for water. Steps I knew by heart. Steps I had heard when he was a child and woke up scared from a nightmare. Steps I had heard when he was a teenager and came home late. Steps that were now walking all over my trust as if it were a floor that no longer mattered to keep clean. I stared into the darkness for a long time, and then I slowly smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy, nor one of madness. It was the smile of someone who has just understood the whole game, of someone who knows exactly what they are going to do next. Because if there's one thing I learned in 64 years of life, it is this. Age doesn't take away your intelligence. On the contrary, it gives you something much more valuable. It gives you patience. It gives you the ability to observe without reacting. It gives you the coolness needed to act at the exact right moment. And that moment was about to arrive. I closed my eyes again, this time with genuine calm. Jalen and Tamara thought they had everything calculated. They thought I was just a naive old woman who kept money under the mattress, waiting for someone smarter to come and take it. But they were wrong, because this old woman had been preparing for a day like this for years. Not exactly this scenario, not exactly this betrayal, but for the moment when I would have to protect myself, even from my own blood. Early tomorrow, as soon as the sun rose, I also had a plan. And 50 minutes after they tried to rob me, their lives were going to change forever. 5 days before that night, everything seemed normal, or at least that's what I wanted to believe. Jalen had come home on a Tuesday afternoon with a bag of pastries and my favorite brand of coffee. The gesture surprised me from the beginning, not because my son was inconsiderate, but because he hadn't brought anything without me asking for months. "Mom, I brought you this because I know you like it," he said, setting the items on the kitchen counter. "Tamara asked me to stop by and say hello. She says it's been too long since the 3 of us talked." I turned from the stove, where I was heating water for tea. I looked him in the eye, searching for something, any sign of genuine sincerity. But the only thing I found was that smile that no longer reached his eyes, that smile he had learned to wear like a mask. "That's nice, son. You know you're always welcome here." He stood in the kitchen longer than necessary. He looked around as if searching for something specific. His eyes stopped at the small desk next to the window where I usually pay bills. My handbag was half open there, with my wallet barely peeking out. "So how are things going with your finances, Mom? Everything okay with the bank?" And there it was, the real reason for the visit. "Fine, Jalen, everything's fine. You know I'm careful with my things." "No, sure, I only ask because Tamara and I were thinking that maybe you could use some help managing your money better. You know there are investments, high-yield accounts. You could be earning more." I smiled as I poured the hot water into 2 mugs, one for him, one for me. The steam rose between us like a transparent curtain. "Oh, son, I'm too old for all those modern things. I prefer my usual way. That way, I don't get confused." "But Mom, seriously, you could have so much more. We could help you. We could even open a joint account. That way, if anything happens to you—" "If anything happens to me," I interrupted gently, "everything is in order. I already have my documents ready. My will is done. You don't have to worry about that." I saw him clench his jaw. Just a second, just a flicker, but I saw it. "It's not about that, Mom. It's because we want you to be secure, that your money is well protected." "It is protected, Jalen. Very protected." We drank the coffee in awkward silence. He stared at his mug. I looked at him. At some point in the last few years, my son had become a stranger who shared my blood, but no longer my values. When he left that afternoon, I remained seated in the kitchen for a long time. The pastries were still untouched on the table. I wasn't hungry. I just had that heavy feeling in my stomach that appears when you know something bad is coming, but you can't yet see its full shape. 2 days later, Tamara came alone. That was truly strange. Tamara never came alone. She always needed Jalen as a shield, as a translator for her intentions. But that Thursday morning, she knocked on my door with a huge smile and a tray of cookies bought from that expensive downtown bakery. "Sweetheart, so good to see you. I was in the neighborhood, and I said, I just have to stop by and say hello to Alara." She called me sweetheart when she wanted something. "Come in, Tamara. I was just about to fix some lunch." "No, don't bother. I'm just here for a minute." "But listen, sweetheart, I wanted to ask you something important." She sat down in the living room with her legs crossed, very elegant, very composed. Tamara always knew how to sell herself well. Impeccable clothes, perfect makeup, measured words. Everything about her was a careful presentation. "Jalen told me that you have your savings really well hidden. That's great, absolutely great. But look, I work at a credit union, you know, and I know a lot of options that could help you multiply that money, safe options for people your age." Tamara didn't work at a credit union. She worked part-time at a clothing boutique, but I didn't say anything. I just nodded and waited for her to continue. "The thing is, with inflation, with everything going up, money just sitting there loses value. But if you invest it wisely, you could live much better, maybe even help us out if we ever needed it." There it was again, the same song with a different voice. "I appreciate the concern, Tamara, but I'm fine just the way I am." "But sweetheart, think about it. You're already 64 years old. You need to think about your future, your security. We could handle everything. You would only have to sign a few papers, and that's it. No complications." Sign a few papers. There was the complete trap served on a silver platter. "No, thank you. I prefer to keep everything as it is." I saw her smile tighten slightly. The muscles around her mouth hardened for a fraction of a second before relaxing again. "Well, sweetheart, you know we only want the best for you, but if you change your mind, we're here." She left with the same smile she arrived with. The cookies remained on my table. I didn't touch them either. I didn't want to eat anything that came from those hands. That night, I couldn't sleep well. I kept thinking about both of their words, about how they had coordinated their attacks. First Jalen with his false concern, then Tamara with her poisoned offer. Both seeking the same thing: access to my money. On Friday, Jalen returned, this time with a different excuse. "Mom, I need to ask you a favor. It's temporary, I swear. We're a little tight with the bills this month, and we would need about $3,000, borrowed. I'll pay you back in 2 weeks. Word." $3,000, a specific amount, an amount that proved they already knew how much I had. "Jalen, I've loaned you money many times, and few times have you returned it all." "This time is different, Mom. I will give it back this time. I have a new project, a business opportunity, but I need startup capital." I shook my head slowly. "No, son, not this time." His face changed. The mask cracked completely. "I can't believe you'd be so selfish. You have money saved up, doing nothing, and you don't want to help your own son, your own family." Selfish. That word hit me harder than anything else. "Jalen, I worked 42 years to have that money. It's not selfishness to take care of what cost me so much to get. It's survival." "Survival? That's ridiculous, Mom. You're old. What do you need so much saved money for? Are you going to take it to the grave?" I just stared at him in silence. That man in front of me was no longer my son. I don't know when I lost him, when the road twisted, but the Jalen I knew had disappeared a long time ago. "I think it's better if you leave," I told him in a calm voice. He left, slamming the door so hard the window frames shook, and I stood there in the middle of the living room, finally understanding that the war had already begun, that my own in-laws and my own blood son had decided that I was the enemy. That night, I reviewed all my documents, my bank account, my passwords, my savings. Everything was in order, everything was secure, but I knew that wouldn't be enough. I knew that Jalen and Tamara wouldn't stop with a simple refusal. They wanted that money, and they were willing to do whatever was necessary to get it. What they didn't know was that I, too, was willing to do whatever was necessary to protect it, because that money wasn't just numbers in an account. It was my dignity. It was my independence. It was proof that I was worth something beyond being a mother or a grandmother. It was my entire life converted into figures, and absolutely no one was going to take it from me without a fight. Saturday dawned gray, one of those days where the sky seems to have the same color as dark thoughts. I got up early, as always. I made my coffee, sat by the window, and watched the empty street as the steam rose from my mug. I hadn't seen Jalen or Tamara for 3 days, 3 days of silence after that argument. Part of me wanted to believe they had given up, that they had understood I wouldn't yield, but the other part, the wiser part, knew that silence only meant they were planning something different, and I was right. At 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang. I looked out the window before opening. It was Jalen, alone, with a grocery bag in his hand, and that look of a repentant child he used to put on when he was little and broke something. I opened the door without saying a word. "Mom, I came to apologize. I went too far the other day. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I brought things to make you lunch, your favorite meal." I let him in, because there was still that maternal part of me that wants to believe in redemption. That foolish part that thinks, maybe, just maybe, her son had come to his senses. He started taking things out of the bag. Chicken, vegetables, rice, things I indeed liked. He started cooking without asking permission, moving through my kitchen with a familiarity that no longer felt comfortable. While he cooked, he talked. He talked about his childhood, about when I taught him to make biscuits, about when I took him to school on cold mornings. He talked about beautiful memories that I also held in my heart, but there was something false in his nostalgia, something acted out. "You know, Mom, I've been thinking a lot. Tamara and I have been really stressed lately. We have debts, a lot of debts." There was the real motive for the visit. I didn't turn around. I kept looking out the window while he continued. "We owe about $32,000. Credit card, a personal loan, overdue bills. I don't know what to do anymore. They're going to repossess the car, maybe even the house." I felt a pang of genuine concern. Despite everything, he was still my son, but I held firm. "And how did you end up owing so much, Jalen?" I heard him stop chopping the vegetables. Silence stretched for a few seconds before he answered. "Bad decisions. Expenses we shouldn't have made. Tamara wanted to renovate the whole house. I wanted to please her. And now we're sinking." Tamara wanted. It was always Tamara who wanted. Jalen never took his own responsibility. "And you've come to ask me to pay your debts." "I haven't come to ask. I've come to beg you. Mom, we're your family, your only family. If we fall, you'll be left alone." I turned slowly to look at him. He was next to the stove, kitchen knife in hand, his eyes shining. I don't know if from real or feigned tears. "Jalen, I don't have $32,000 to give you." I lied. Of course I had it. I had almost triple that, but he didn't need to know. "I know you have more, Mom. I know you've been saving your whole life. Please, this is the last time I'll ask you for something like this." The last time. How many times had I heard that phrase? "I can't help you with that. I'm sorry." His face transformed. The mask of the repentant son fell away completely, and something darker was exposed. Something that scared me. "You know what, Mom? I'm tired. Tired of you always being so closed off, so distrustful. You hoard all that money as if you were going to live forever, as if you had no obligation to your own blood. I don't have an obligation to pay the debts you created due to your lack of control." He laughed, a bitter, humorless laugh. "Lack of control? Look who's talking. The woman who lived her whole life counting pennies, denying herself any pleasure, saving and saving like a scared rat. That comparison hurt more than I wanted to admit. I think you need to leave, Jalen. Or what? What are you going to do? Call the police? Report your own son? Everyone will find out what kind of mother you are. A mother who lets her son fail when he needs her the most. He walked toward me with slow, intimidating steps. He didn't raise a hand, he didn't touch me, but his presence felt threatening. He wanted me to be afraid. He wanted to break me, but I was already broken from years ago, and when there is nothing left to break, all that remains is hardness. Leave now! We looked at each other for long seconds, his eyes against mine, son against mother, and in that moment, I knew I had lost Jalen forever, that the boy I raised no longer existed, that in his place was a desperate man manipulated by his wife, blinded by ambition. He left without saying goodbye. The food was half prepared on the stove, the smell of the chicken mixed with the bitter taste of disappointment. I sat down at the kitchen table and cried. Not much, just what was necessary. I cried for the son I lost, for the family I never truly had, for the years I invested believing that love was enough to keep blood ties together. But the tears dried quickly, because behind the sadness came something stronger. It was the certainty that I had to protect myself, that I had to act before they acted first. That night, when it got dark, I heard noises outside my house, soft footsteps, careful movements. I peeked out the window with the lights off and saw a figure next to my mailbox. It was Tamara. She was going through my mail. She was looking for my bank statements. I didn't go out to confront her. I just watched as she checked every envelope, as she took photos with her cell phone of the ones with the bank logo, as she put everything back, trying to make it look untouched. When she left, I went out and collected all the mail. Indeed, there was a bank statement. I opened it with trembling hands. It was all there. My full balance, $83,400. The result of 42 years of sacrifice. And now they knew exactly how much I had. I stayed awake all that night, not out of fear, but planning, thinking about every move I had to make, about how to protect what was mine without destroying myself in the process. On Sunday, I didn't leave the house. I didn't want to go to Sunday service as I always did. I didn't want to see anyone. I just needed to think with absolute clarity. Tamara called me mid-afternoon. Sweetheart, so nice to talk to you. Listen, Jalen told me what happened yesterday. I'm so sorry. He was very stressed. He didn't mean to say those things. You know how he is when he's stressed. Always the same technique. Tamara cleaning up the mess Jalen made. Tamara using a soft voice after the aggression. Tamara, I don't want to talk about this right now. No, sweetheart, listen to me. We really need your help, and you have the means to help us. I know you have over $80,000 saved. That's a lot of money for one person. Even half would save us. My blood ran cold. She said it so naturally, so confidently, confirming that they had indeed been investigating my finances. How do you know how much I have? Because we love you, sweetheart. Because we worry about you and your security. That money should be in a safer place, with us. You are not going to touch my money, Tamara. Oh, sweetheart, don't be like that. Think about your son. Think about your family. You don't want to see us on the street, do you? If you end up on the street, it will be because of your own decisions, not mine. I hung up the phone before she could answer. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anger held back for too long. That night, as I tried to sleep, I heard Jalen again. He was talking on the phone with Tamara, and this time he wasn't hiding his true intention. Babe, there's no other option left. We have to do it the way we planned. She's never going to give us that money willingly. Monday morning, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't had in weeks. I hadn't slept much after hearing that last conversation, but my mind was sharper than ever. At 7 in the morning, I was already dressed. I put on my best outfit, the one I saved for important occasions. I carefully brushed my hair and even put on a little lipstick. I wanted to look like what I was, a capable, lucid woman in total control of her faculties. At 8 on the dot, I left the house. Jalen was still asleep in the guest room. I didn't say anything to him. I just grabbed my handbag and gently closed the door. The morning was cool. I walked the 4 blocks to the bus stop, feeling how every step gave me more strength. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to wait around for them to strip me of what had taken a lifetime to build. The bus arrived on time. I sat by the window and watched the city wake up. People going to work, children on their way to school, vendors opening their stands. Normal life for all of them. Meanwhile, I was heading to the bank to protect my future from my own blood. The local credit union was downtown. It was an old but well-maintained building, with that characteristic smell of paper and air conditioning. I arrived just as they were opening the doors. "Good morning, ma'am. How can we help you?" The receptionist was young, maybe Jalen's age. She smiled at me with that professional friendliness taught in training. "I need to speak to someone about my account. It's urgent." They showed me into a small office. The account executive was a man in his 40s with glasses and an impeccable tie. He introduced himself as Mr. Kevin Williams. "Ms. Sterling, good to have you here. Your account has been with us for many years. How can we be of service?" I sat across from him and placed my hands on my handbag. I took a deep breath before speaking. "I need to change my access code, and I need to activate every possible security alert on my account." Mr. Williams nodded while typing something on his computer. "Of course, I can do that right now. Any particular reason you need these changes?" I hesitated for a second, but then decided that the truth, however painful, was necessary. "My family is trying to access my money without my consent." I saw his expression change. It was no longer just professional courtesy. Now there was genuine understanding. He had probably seen similar cases before. "I understand perfectly, Ms. Sterling. Unfortunately, this is more common than people think. We are going to secure your account immediately." We spent the next hour setting everything up. I changed my 4-digit code. The new one was my mother's date of birth, someone Jalen never met, a date he could never guess. 3108. We activated text message alerts for any movement greater than $100. We configured it so that any withdrawal over $500 required my physical presence at the bank with identification. "And there's one more thing, Mr. Williams. I need to open a second account." "A second account?" "I want to transfer almost all my money to that new account. I will leave only $5,000 in the current account." The executive looked at me over his glasses. He immediately understood what I was doing. "I understand. That's an intelligent strategy. If someone checks your main account, they will see a lower balance. The rest will be protected in an account no one else knows about." "Exactly." We opened the second account in 20 minutes. This one had no debit card, only a savings passbook that would be sent to me by mail at a different address. I gave him the address of my friend Ruth, who lived across town. I had called her early that morning to ask for the favor, and she accepted without asking questions. We transferred $78,400 to the new account. Only $5,000 remained in the account that Jalen and Tamara knew about. "One more thing, Mr. Williams. If anyone calls asking about my account or tries to make movements, I need to be notified immediately." "Absolutely. I'm going to put an alert note in your file. No one will be able to access information about your accounts without your express authorization." I left the bank feeling like I had won the first battle. The sun was already high in the sky, and it was warm. I stopped at a nearby cafe and ordered a latte and a pastry. I sat by the window and watched people pass by while I ate slowly, savoring every bite. For the first time in days, I felt something akin to peace. But I knew this was just beginning. Jalen and Tamara wouldn't stop with a simple refusal, and when they discovered I had moved my money, they would become more desperate. I had to be prepared for what was coming. I returned home just after 11 in the morning. Jalen was in the living room watching television as if nothing had happened between us, as if he hadn't yelled at me the day before, as if he hadn't threatened to destroy my reputation. "Where were you, Mom?" "Out running errands." "What errands?" I looked at him squarely. I was no longer afraid of his interrogatory tone. "My business, Jalen. Things that don't concern you. I saw him clench his jaw. He wanted to push further, but something in my attitude stopped him. Tamara is coming over this afternoon. She wants to talk to you. I have nothing to talk about with Tamara. Mom, please don't be like that. She just wants to help. Help. That word had lost all its meaning. Jalen, listen to me carefully, because I'm only going to say this once. My money is mine. I earned it, I saved it, and absolutely no one is going to tell me what to do with it. He stood up from the sofa with abrupt movements. You are unbelievable, Mom. Seriously, you have your son drowning, and you won't lift a finger to help him. You are drowning because of your own decisions. It's not my responsibility to save you every time you make bad choices. He stormed out of the house, slamming the door again. This time, it didn't affect me. I had already gotten used to his dramatic reactions. I sat down in my favorite armchair and took a deep breath. I took out my cell phone, that device Jalen had given me last year and that I barely knew how to use. I checked the messages. There was one from the bank confirming the code change and the alert activation. Everything was in order. In the afternoon, as Jalen had warned, Tamara arrived, but she didn't come alone. She brought her mother, a woman I barely knew, but who had a reputation for being nosy and manipulative. Sweetheart, so good to see you. This is my mom, Ms. Denise Hayes. Ms. Hayes looked me up and down with that expression people have when they've already judged you before meeting you. So you're the famous Alara. My daughter has told me a lot about you. I hope good things, I replied without much interest. They sat down without me inviting them. Tamara on the sofa, her mother in the armchair that had belonged to my late husband. Seeing that stranger sitting there irritated me more than I expected. Look, Miss Alara, I'm going to speak frankly. My daughter and her husband are in a very difficult situation, and you have the means to help them, but you refuse. That's not right. Family helps family. With all due respect, Ms. Hayes, you don't know my situation or my history. You have no right to judge my decisions. I have every right. My daughter is suffering because of your stinginess. Stinginess. Another word they threw at me like a rock. Your daughter and my son got into debt on their own. I didn't sign their credit cards. I didn't ask for their loans. Their problems are consequences of their actions. Ms. Hayes stood up, indignant. What kind of mother are you? What kind of person lets her son sink when she has the capacity to save him? A person who learned that saving someone over and over only teaches them that there will never be consequences for their mistakes. The silence that followed was thick. Tamara looked at the floor. Her mother looked at me with pure hatred, and I looked at both of them with the calm of someone who has already made her decision and won't change it. I think it's time for you to leave. This isn't going to end here, Ms. Alara. My daughter deserves that money. Jalen deserves that money, and one way or another, they are going to get it. It was a clear, direct threat without disguise. I walked them to the door and locked it behind them. I leaned against the wooden door and closed my eyes. One way or another, she had said. Now I knew they would definitely try something, that the plan I had overheard the previous night was not just empty words, it was a promise of action. But I was already prepared. That night, I prepared a simple dinner, vegetable soup and toast. I ate in silence while it grew dark outside. Jalen didn't return home. He was probably with Tamara planning their next move. I washed the dishes, carefully dried everything, and put every item back in its place. Then I went to my room and checked my phone one last time. The bank had sent another message. Dear client, your new passbook will be shipped within the next 5 business days. 5 days. I had to hold out for 5 more days until I had physical access to my other account. I could do it. I lay down, but I didn't turn off the light. I lay there watching the ceiling, waiting. The next 3 days were strangely quiet. Jalen didn't return home, didn't call, didn't send messages, didn't show any sign of life. It was as if he had completely disappeared. And that absence, far from calming me, made me more nervous. Jalen's silence was worse than his shouting. On Tuesday, I went to the market as I always did. I bought what was needed for the week. Fresh vegetables, fruit, a little meat. Routine helped me stay calm. As I was choosing tomatoes, I saw a neighbor who waved at me from afar. Ms. Gloria, a woman my age who lived 3 houses down. "Elara, so good to see you. How have you been?" "Fine, Gloria. Same as always." "Listen, I wanted to ask you. The other day, I saw your son with a young woman checking your mailbox around 11 at night. It seemed strange to me at that hour." My blood ran cold, but I maintained my composure. "Oh, they were looking for an important letter. You know how young people are. They leave everything until the last minute." Gloria nodded, but in her eyes, I saw that she didn't quite believe me. She said goodbye and continued her shopping. I stood there, holding the tomatoes with trembling hands. They were monitoring my mail, waiting for the new account passbook to arrive. That's why I had it sent to Ruth's house. That's why I had been careful. I arrived home and put everything away in silence. The empty house weighed on me more than ever. The walls seemed to constantly remind me that I was alone, that my only son had abandoned me, or worse, was planning how to rob me. On Wednesday, I received a call. It was a voice I didn't know. "Ms. Sterling, I'm calling from the law offices of Marshall & Associates. Your son, Jalen, has hired us to speak with you about a family matter." An attorney. Now they were using attorneys. "I have nothing to discuss with any office. My son has no right to involve lawyers in my personal affairs. Ma'am, we understand your position, but your son alleges that you are not in a condition to handle your finances adequately. He is requesting an evaluation of your mental capacity." My breath caught. An evaluation of mental capacity. They wanted to declare me incompetent to take control of my money. I am 64 years old and perfectly well. This is abuse. "It's not abuse, ma'am. It's a legitimate concern from a son for his mother. If you refuse the evaluation, he can request it through the courts. Let him do what he wants. I will not submit to any evaluation because I am perfectly sane." I hung up the phone with my hands trembling with fury. This was a new tactic. If they couldn't convince me, if they couldn't rob me directly, they would try to declare me incompetent. They would try to take away my autonomy, my dignity, my right to decide about my own life. I immediately called Ruth. "Ruth, I need your help. I need the name of a good lawyer." "Elara, what's going on? Are you okay?" I told her everything, every detail, the threats, the attempts at manipulation, the call from the law firm. Ruth listened in silence, and when I finished, she sighed deeply. "Oh, friend, how awful. How is it possible for a son to do this to his mother?" "I don't know, Ruth. I don't recognize Jalen anymore. It's as if he's turned into a different person." "Look, my nephew is an attorney. He specializes in family law. Let me talk to him. He'll help you." That afternoon, Ruth's nephew called me. His name was Attorney Miles Johnson, and he had a calm, reassuring voice. "Ms. Sterling, my aunt told me about your situation. I want you to know that what your son is attempting is very difficult to achieve. To declare someone incompetent, you need solid medical evidence, psychiatric evaluations, neurological assessments. They can't do it just because he says so. But they can try, right? And the process can be long and painful. They can try, and the process can be long and painful. That's why I recommend you get ahead of it. Go to your doctor, request full evaluations that prove you are perfectly fine. That way, you'll have documents to support your capacity. I'll do it tomorrow first thing. And Ms. Sterling, is there anything else I should consider? If your son continues with these actions, you could request a restraining order. Protect yourself legally." A restraining order against my own son? I never thought it would come to this. "Let me think about it, attorney." "Of course. In the meantime, document everything. Every call, every threat, every attempt to access your information. Everything can be useful if this goes to court." I hung up, feeling overwhelmed. My life had turned into a legal battle against my own family, against the person who had grown in my womb, who had been my reason for living for so many years. On Thursday, I went to the doctor. Dr. Aaron Carter had known me for 15 years. He had treated me for every illness, every ache, every health concern. Ms. Sterling, nice to see you. What brings you in? Doctor, I need you to do full evaluations, memory tests, cognitive tests, everything that can prove I am in perfect use of my mental faculties. He looked at me with concern. Has something happened? I told him a summarized version of the situation. I saw his expression change from concern to indignation. That's unbelievable what they're doing. Of course, I'll help you. We'll run all the necessary tests. I spent the next 2 hours on assessments: short and long-term memory, temporal and spatial orientation, reasoning ability, a complete cognitive evaluation. I answered every question. I completed every exercise. I demonstrated that my mind was as clear as ever. Ms. Sterling, your results are excellent. You are in perfect mental condition. In fact, you have a better memory than many 40-year-olds. I'm going to prepare a detailed medical report that you can use for whatever you need. Thank you, doctor. You don't know how much this means to me. I left the office with the report in my handbag and a strange feeling in my chest. Relief from having medical confirmation of my health, but also deep sadness because I needed that piece of paper to defend myself from my own son. That night, Jalen finally returned home. He arrived around 8, walked in without saying hello, went straight to his room, and closed the door. He didn't come out for dinner, didn't say a word. He just shut himself in like a resentful teenager. I stayed in the living room pretending to watch television, but really listening for any sound coming from his room, any sign of what he was planning. After midnight, I heard his voice. He was on the phone again. This time I couldn't distinguish the complete words, but I caught fragments. It's almost ready. We just need the exact moment. When the bank confirmation arrives, my heart started beating faster. They were waiting for something from the bank, something that would confirm information about my accounts. Tomorrow night? Yes, tomorrow is perfect. She won't suspect anything. Tomorrow night? Friday. Only one day left until whatever they were planning. I silently got up and went to my room. I locked the door, something I had never done before. I sat on the bed and took out my phone. I checked the bank messages. Nothing new, just the security confirmations I already knew about. But they were expecting something, some information, some document. And then I understood. They were waiting for my monthly bank statement, the one that always arrived the first few days of the month, the one that would show all my transactions, including the transfer I had made to the new account. If they saw that bank statement, they would know I moved the money. They would know I had discovered them. And then who knows what they would do? I made a quick decision. The next day I would go to the bank again. I would ask them to stop the physical mailing of bank statements, that everything be digital to a new email address I would open just for that. An email they wouldn't know about. Not yet. Not until I was completely protected. I lay down, but I didn't sleep. I stayed there watching the closed door of my room, listening to every sound in the house. Jalen's steps when he went to the bathroom, the creaking of the floorboards, the sound of the wind against the windows. Everything seemed threatening now. My own house had become a silent battlefield, and Friday would be the decisive day, the day they planned to do something, the day I would have to be more alert than ever. I closed my eyes just for a moment, just to rest my vision. But my mind kept working, planning, preparing, because I knew that what was coming wouldn't be easy, that Jalen and Tamara were desperate, and desperation makes people make extreme decisions. I had to be ready for anything, for my money, for my dignity, for my life. Friday dawned with a heavy feeling in the air, as if even the weather knew something important was about to happen. I got up before Jalen. I made strong coffee and sat by the window like every morning, but this time I wasn't enjoying the tranquility. I was watching, observing every movement on the street, every car that passed, every person walking in front of my house. At 7 a.m, I left. I left a note for Jalen saying I had gone to the market. But in reality, I went straight to the bank. I needed to make the final changes before it was too late. Mr. Kevin Williams greeted me with the same kindness as always. Ms. Sterling, what a surprise to see you again so soon. Is everything okay with your account? Yes, Mr. Williams, but I need to make one more change. I need to cancel the mailing of bank statements. I want everything to be digital. Of course. That's safer that way. I'll set up your online banking access. We spent the next hour setting everything up. He taught me how to log into the system, how to check my transactions, how to change passwords. It was complicated for me, who barely knew how to use the phone, but I paid full attention. I took notes in a notebook that I kept at the bottom of my handbag. One more thing, Ms. Sterling. Your new passbook will arrive at the address you provided in 2 more days, Monday or Tuesday at the latest. Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. To serve you. And remember, any strange movement in your account, we will contact you immediately. I left the bank feeling like I had done everything possible to protect myself. Now, all that was left was to wait, to see what Jalen and Tamara would do when they discovered they couldn't access my money. I returned home just after 10 in the morning. Jalen was in the kitchen eating cereal straight from the box. He looked at me when I entered but didn't say anything. Neither did I. The silence between us was so dense it could almost be touched. I put away my things and went to my room. I needed to rest a little. The tension of the last few days was taking its toll. My head hurt, my chest hurt, my whole soul hurt. I lay down on the bed without taking off my shoes. I closed my eyes just for a moment, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was already night. I looked at the clock on my bedside table, 10:30. I had slept almost 12 hours. I sat up, confused, disoriented. I didn't remember the last time I had slept so much. The house was silent, too silent. I got up and carefully opened my bedroom door. The living room was dark, the kitchen too, but there was light coming from under Jalen's door. And then I heard it, that voice I already knew, that voice I had learned to fear. Jalen was on the phone with Tamara, and this time he wasn't whispering. This time he was speaking clearly because he thought I was still asleep. Babe, listen carefully. The bank statement didn't arrive. I checked the mailbox 3 times today and nothing. Something is going on. Tamara's voice sounded muffled on the other end, but I could make out her urgent tone. No, I don't think it's a mail delay. I think she figured it out. I think she did something to protect her information. Silence while Tamara spoke. I know we need that money, babe. I know they're going to foreclose on the house, but if she changed everything, we won't be able to do anything. More silence. I heard Jalen pacing back and forth in his room. His footsteps sounded anxious, desperate. Wait, I have an idea. She still has her debit card, right? The physical card is in her wallet. If we get that card and the code... My heart started beating faster. I knew what would come next. Yes, I know. She changed the code, but we can try the obvious numbers. Her birthday, my dad's date of passing. It can't be too complicated. She's an old lady. An old lady. As if my age made me stupid. Tamara must have suggested something because Jalen was silent for a moment before responding. Tonight, she's really sound asleep. She won't wake up. I'll look for her wallet, take the card, copy the numbers, and put it back. Early tomorrow morning, you go to the ATM, and we'll try codes until it works. You take out the $5,000 that are left in the account. $5,000. They thought I only had $5,000 left. They didn't know I had moved everything else. They didn't know that even those $5,000 were no longer accessible with the card they planned to steal. Listen, Tamara, this has to go well. It's our only chance. If she notices, if she wakes up, if anything goes wrong, there'll be no way to recover. We lost the apartment. We're about to lose the car. This is the last thing we can do. The desperation in his voice was real, but I didn't feel pity. I only felt a mixture of sadness and determination. I returned to my room in absolute silence. I closed the door without making a sound. I sat on the bed and thought quickly. I had 2 options. I could confront him now, tell him I had heard everything, expose his plan before he executed it, or I could let him try, let him fail, let him discover for himself that it was already too late. I chose the second option. I opened my wallet and took out the useless card. I placed it in the most visible spot, as if I used it regularly. Then I lay down on the bed, fully dressed. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I stayed completely still, breathing deeply and evenly, feigning the deepest sleep of my life. And I waited. A half hour passed, 45 minutes, a full hour. And then I heard my bedroom door slowly opening. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought Jalen would hear it, but I kept my breathing calm. I kept my eyes closed. I kept every muscle in my body relaxed. I heard his footsteps approaching, slow, careful, like an animal stalking prey. He stopped next to my bed. I could feel his presence. I could feel his eyes on me. He was checking to make sure I was still asleep. I didn't move. I didn't change my breathing. I was a perfect statue. Then I heard the sound of my handbag being lifted, the soft noise of the zipper opening, the rustle of his fingers searching through my things. He found the wallet. I heard him open it, heard him take out the card. I imagined his triumphant smile holding it in his hands. There was a moment of silence. He was probably copying the numbers of the card on his phone. Then I heard him putting it back in the wallet, closing my bag and moving toward the door. The door closed. I opened my eyes in the darkness. A tear rolled down my cheek before I could stop it. It wasn't because of the attempted robbery. It was because I had definitively confirmed that my son was lost, that the boy I raised no longer existed, that in his place was a stranger capable of entering my room in the middle of the night to rob me. I lay still. I heard Jalen leave the house. I heard the car starting and driving away. He was probably going to meet Tamara to plan the early morning heist. I looked at the clock. 3:15 in the morning, the same hour I had heard the first conversation, the same hour this whole plan had begun. But now the end was near. Early tomorrow, when Tamara tried to use that card, she would discover it didn't work, that it was from a closed account, that it had all been useless. And 50 minutes after that discovery, their lives would change forever. I got out of bed and went to the kitchen. I made hot tea and sat by the window to wait for dawn. There was no point in trying to sleep anymore. There was no point in pretending things were fine. Tomorrow would be the day of reckoning, the day the truth would come out, the day Jalen and Tamara would understand that they had completely underestimated the old woman they thought they could deceive. I slowly drank my tea as the sky began to lighten. Friday was ending. Saturday was about to begin, and with it, the silent justice I had been preparing for days. I smiled in the darkness, the same smile I had worn that first night when I heard them planning my robbery, the smile of someone who knows exactly how the story will end. Saturday dawned with a strange silence. Jalen hadn't returned all night. The house was empty and cold, but I was completely awake. I hadn't slept a minute after seeing him steal my card. I prepared myself as usual. I bathed, dressed, and carefully combed my hair. I wanted to be ready for whatever came. I wanted to look strong, dignified, and unbreakable. I made coffee and toast. I sat at the kitchen table and ate calmly while watching the clock. It was 6:30 in the morning. ATMs opened at 7. In half an hour, Tamara would be trying to use the stolen card. In half an hour, she would discover she had failed. I slowly drank my coffee, savoring every sip. There was something liberating about knowing the end was near, that I wouldn't have to pretend anymore, that I wouldn't have to live in fear in my own house. At 7:10, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I didn't answer. 2 minutes later, the same number rang again. This time I answered. "Mom! Mom, you have to help us, please!" It was Jalen. His voice sounded desperate, almost hysterical. "What's wrong, Jalen?" The card doesn't work. Tamara is at the ATM, and it says the account is closed, that it doesn't exist. Mom, what did you do?" I stayed silent for a few seconds, letting the question hang in the air between us. What did I do, Jalen? Or what did you do? "Mom, please, this is no time for games. We need that money. They're going to take the house. They're going to leave us on the street." "That money you need so badly is the money you tried to steal from me last night while I was sleeping." Silence on the other end. A silence that confirmed everything. "I don't know what you're talking about," he finally said, but his voice was trembling. "Jalen, I heard you. I heard every word you said to Tamara on the phone. I heard you planning to enter my room, and I felt it when you entered like a thief and took my wallet. Mom, I only what? Only tried to rob me? Only tried to take what cost me 42 years to earn? Only prove that to you I am nothing but a source of cash? It's not like that. I love you, Mom. It's just that we're desperate. Love doesn't steal, Jalen. Love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't threaten. What you two feel isn't love, it's ambition. I heard him breathing heavily. I heard voices in the background, probably Tamara asking what was happening. What did you do with the money, Mom? Where is it? In a place where you will never be able to touch it. In a safe place, far from your hands. You can't do this to us. We're your family. You stopped being my family the day you decided to see me as a walking ATM. Mom, please, I'm begging you. Loan us even something, whatever it is. 10,000, 5,000, anything. No, Jalen, I won't give you anything, not a cent. It's over. Then you are selfish, an old, selfish woman who prefers to see her son on the street rather than help him. I prefer to teach you that actions have consequences, that you can't live your whole life expecting others to solve your problems. I hung up the phone before he could reply. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from pent-up rage, from deep sadness, and also from liberation. The phone rang again. I didn't answer. It rang 5 more times. I didn't answer then either. Finally, it stopped ringing. I stayed seated in the kitchen, looking at my empty coffee cup. I had imagined this moment many times in the last few days. I had thought I would feel victorious, but I didn't feel victory. I only felt a huge emptiness in my chest. A half hour passed, 45 minutes, a full hour, and then I heard the front door open violently. Jalen stormed in like a hurricane. His face was red with fury, his eyes bloodshot. Behind him came Tamara, equally distraught. "Where is the money?" he yelled. "Where did you put it?" I slowly stood up from my chair. I looked at them with absolute calm. I already told you, in a place where you'll never find it. Jalen walked toward me with threatening steps. He stopped inches from my face. "You're going to tell us right now. What bank? What account? What did you do?" "I won't tell you anything. You can scream all you want. You can threaten me. You can do whatever. You won't touch my money." Tamara stepped forward, tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of rage, not sadness. "Sweetheart, please understand. If we don't get money today, we lose everything. Everything. They'll sue us. They'll garnish us. They'll destroy our credit forever. You should have thought about that before spending what you didn't have, before living beyond your means, before planning to rob an old woman." "We didn't rob you," Jalen shouted. "We were just going to take what belongs to us. That money should be for the family. That money is mine. I earned it, and you have no right to any of it." Jalen took a step back. I saw him take a deep breath, trying to control himself, but the control completely escaped him. "You know what, Mom? I put up with you my whole life. My whole life I endured the way you are, your stinginess, the way you count every penny, your obsession with money. And now that I finally ask you, that I beg you, you turn your back on me." "I never turned my back on you, Jalen. I was the one who worked double shifts to pay for your college. I was the one who sold my jewelry to give you the down payment for your first car. I was the one who loaned you money again and again and again without you paying me back. Don't talk to me about turning your back. Then give me this last chance, this last help, and I swear I will never ask you for anything again." You've told me that same thing 5 times, and there's always a next time. There's always another crisis, always another emergency. No more, Jalen. It's over. I saw something break in his eyes, as if he finally understood he wouldn't get what he wanted, that he had lost this battle. "Fine," he said in a cold voice. "Fine, if that's what you want. But when you're old and sick, when you need someone to care for you, when you're alone and scared, don't expect me to be there." His words were pure poison, designed to hurt me where it hurt the most. I prefer to be alone and with dignity than accompanied and robbed. Tamara let out a cry of frustration. It's unbelievable! Unbelievable! She has over $80,000 saved and won't share any of it. None of it! What kind of person does that? A person who learned that true love cannot be bought or sold, and if I have to buy your affection, then it's worthless. Jalen grabbed Tamara's arm. Let's go. It's not worth it. This woman is dead inside. She only cares about her money. They walked toward the door. But before leaving, Jalen turned one last time. This isn't over, Mom. We're going to get lawyers. We're going to prove you're not well in the head, that you can't manage your money, and when a judge declares you incompetent, that money will be ours anyway. Try it, I told him in a calm voice. I already went to my doctor. I already have full evaluations proving I'm perfectly sane. I've already spoken with an attorney. I've already documented every threat, every attempt at manipulation. Try it, and you will lose. Jalen opened his mouth to reply, but no words came out. Tamara pulled his arm, and they both left, slamming the door so hard the whole house trembled. I stood in the middle of the living room. The silence that followed was deafening. The walls seemed to breathe with me. The entire house seemed to exhale after so much tension. I slowly walked toward the window. I watched them get into the car. I saw Jalen hit the steering wheel in fury. I saw Tamara crying with her hands on her face. I watched as they finally drove away and were gone. And then something strange happened. Something I didn't expect. I sat down in my favorite armchair and began to cry. Not from sadness, not from fear. I cried from liberation. I cried because it was finally over, because I had protected what was mine, because I had defended my dignity. I cried because I had just lost my son, but I had gained my freedom. The tears ran down my cheeks for a long time. I didn't try to stop them. I let it all out. All the accumulated pain, all the disappointment, all the sadness of a mother who watches her son become someone she doesn't recognize. When the tears dried, I got up and went to my room. I opened the drawer where I kept the few photos I had. I took out one of Jalen when he was a child. He was maybe 6 years old, smiling without teeth, hugging me with genuine love. I looked at that photo for a long time. That child no longer existed, and I had to accept it. I had to mourn what could have been and never would be. I put the photo away again, closed the drawer, and left the room feeling that I was also closing a chapter of my life. The phone rang again. It was Ruth. Elara, how are you? I was worried about you. I'm fine, Ruth. Better than I've been in a long time. What happened? I told her everything, every detail of the morning, every word of the confrontation. Ruth listened in silence until I finished. Oh, friend, how brave you were. How strong. Not everyone could do what you did. I don't feel brave, Ruth. I feel tired. But you did good. You protected what was yours. You defended your dignity. Now you can live in peace. I hope so. I hope so with all my heart. We hung up after a little more conversation. Her words gave me comfort. They reminded me that I wasn't alone, that I had true friends, people who valued me for who I was, not for what I had. I spent the rest of the day in silence. I cleaned the house as if I were also cleaning my life. The days that followed were strange. The house felt different, bigger, emptier, but also more mine than ever. Jalen didn't return, didn't call, didn't send messages. It was as if he had erased his mother from his life completely. And although part of me felt the pain of that absence, a stronger part felt relief. On Monday, I received the call I was waiting for. It was Ruth. Elara, an envelope from the bank arrived at my house. I think it's what you were waiting for. I'm coming right over. I took the bus to her house. Ruth lived in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and small but well-kept homes. She greeted me with a long hug and a hot cup of coffee. Here it is, she said, handing me the envelope. I didn't even open it. It's your privacy. Thank you, friend. You don't know how much this means to me. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. There was the passbook for my new account, the account where my $78,000 were safe, my life's effort protected. Finally. I kept looking at that small passbook as if it were the most valuable treasure in the world, and in a way, it was. It represented my independence, my ability to decide about my own life, my intact dignity. Ruth prepared lunch for me. We ate together while I told her every detail of what had happened. She listened, nodding her head, sometimes sighing, sometimes getting indignant. "You know what makes me saddest about all this?" I said to her. "It's not the money, it's not the attempted robbery. It's realizing that my son never saw me as his mother, only as a means to get what he wanted." "Elara, that's not your fault. You did what you could. You raised him well. He made his own choices." "But I wonder where I went wrong. At what point did I lose the boy I knew?" "You didn't go wrong in anything. Sometimes people choose paths we don't expect, and there's nothing we can do to change them." Her words comforted me, but the pain remained deep and permanent. That afternoon, I returned to my house. As I walked in, I immediately noticed that something was different. Jalen's room was open, and it was empty. I slowly walked in. All his clothes were gone, his shoes, his personal belongings, everything. Only the bare bed and the open, empty closet remained. He had come while I was out and taken everything without saying goodbye, without a note, without a final word. I sat on the empty bed and looked around the room, that room where Jalen had slept so many times when he came to visit, that room I had prepared with so much love so he would feel welcome. Now it was just an empty space, like the relationship we had shared. I didn't cry this time. I had no tears left for Jalen. All that remained was a profound resignation, an acceptance that some things simply cannot be fixed. I closed the room door and decided that it would remain closed, like that chapter of my life. The days turned into weeks. I settled into a new routine. I woke up early, made my coffee, read the paper, went to the market on Tuesdays and Fridays, visited Ruth on Thursdays, and went to Sunday service. It was a simple, quiet life, and for the first time in a long time, it was a life in peace. One Wednesday afternoon, while watering the plants in my small garden, I saw a car park in front of my house. My heart leaped, thinking it was Jalen, but it wasn't. It was a woman I didn't know. She got out of the car nervously, looking at my house as if she wasn't sure she was in the right place. She rang the doorbell. I went out to open it cautiously. "Ms. Elara Sterling?" she asked. "Yes, that's me." "My name is Ms. Vanessa Brown. I'm a social worker from the Department of Family Services. Your son, Jalen, filed a petition alleging that you require supervision and possible guardianship due to mental incapacity." I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. They had done it. They had actually followed through on their threat. "Please, come in." Ms. Brown entered and sat in the living room. She took out a folder with documents and a small recorder. "Ms. Sterling, I just need to ask you a few questions. This is standard procedure. Your son alleges that you show signs of confusion, that you make erratic financial decisions, and that you could be a victim of fraud or manipulation." I took a deep breath before replying. "Ms. Brown, my son is lying, and I can prove it." I went to my room and came back with all the documents I had prepared. Dr. Aaron Carter's medical report, the cognitive evaluations, the bank statements showing my finances were in perfect order, the notes I had taken documenting every threat, every attempt at manipulation. I handed everything to the social worker. She reviewed each document with growing attention. I saw her expression change as she read. "Ms. Sterling, these documents are very clear. You are in perfect use of your mental faculties. Your finances are extremely well organized, and I see you have documented several attempts by your son to access your money." "That's right. My son and his wife tried to rob me. When they couldn't, they decided to declare me incompetent to take control of my assets." "This is very serious. This would constitute attempted financial abuse of an elderly adult." "I do not wish to file a legal report against them," I said firmly. "I only want it recorded that his accusation is false, that I am perfectly fine, and that I don't need any guardianship." Ms. Brown closed her folder and looked at me with a mixture of respect and sadness. I will close this case immediately, and I will state in my report that your son's petition appears to be motivated by financial interest, not genuine concern. This will be in his record. If he tries anything similar in the future, this history will count against him. Thank you. That's all I need. Ms. Sterling, if you'll allow me to say something personal, I see many cases like yours, children who try to take advantage of elderly parents, and very few have the strength you had to protect yourself. You should be proud. Her words comforted me more than I expected. When she left, I stayed seated in the living room for a long time, processing what had just happened. Jalen had tried until the end. He had used every weapon he had, but he had failed. And now it was officially recorded that his intention was not to protect me, but to dispossess me. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. No fear, no anxiety, no listening for voices behind the walls planning to dispossess me. Only the silence, the blessed silence of peace regained. The days continued to pass. Jalen's room remained empty. The phone didn't ring with his name. It was as if he had erased his mother from his life completely, and I was learning to live with that absence. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I'd see something on TV and think, I'm going to tell Jalen this. Or I'd cook and instinctively make too much, as if he were coming home for dinner. But then I would remember, and the pain would return, sharp and fresh. Ruth visited often. She invited me to her house, to gatherings with other friends, to walk in the park. She was helping me rebuild a social life I had neglected by always being available for Jalen. One Saturday, 2 months after the last time I saw my son, I was at the market buying vegetables when I saw him. He was across the plaza with Tamara. Both were carrying bags of clothes that looked expensive, new. Tamara wore large sunglasses and a designer handbag. They looked good. They looked as if they had no financial worries. And then I understood. They had gotten money another way. Maybe another loan, maybe from Tamara's family, maybe they had sold something. It didn't matter how. The important thing was that they were still living beyond their means. They still hadn't learned the lesson. Jalen saw me. I know he saw me because his eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, but he immediately looked away, as if I were a stranger, as if we had never known each other. And I did the same. I looked away. I continued buying my vegetables. I continued with my life. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain. I only felt confirmation that I had made the right decision, that protecting my money hadn't been selfishness. It had been survival. Because if I had given them that money, they would have not only spent it, they would have also come back for more again and again until they left me with nothing. I paid for my vegetables and walked toward the bus stop. The sun was high and bright. It was a beautiful day, and for the first time in many years, I felt that my life could be beautiful too. Quiet mine, without manipulation, without threats, without having to watch every word, every action, every decision. Free. Finally, completely free. 6 months after that last confrontation with Jalen, my life had found a rhythm I never imagined possible. I woke up every morning without that weight on my chest, without that anxiety of wondering what would come next, without having to check my wallet every night to make sure everything was still in place. The house, though quieter, felt warmer. I had converted Jalen's room into a small workshop. I bought a used sewing machine and returned to something I had abandoned for years, making my own curtains, tablecloths, cushions, simple things that brought me joy. Ruth had introduced me to her group of friends. We met every Thursday afternoon, drank coffee, shared stories, and laughed at things only women our age understand. They were women like me. Women who had worked all their lives, women who had raised children, women who had learned that family is not always synonymous with loyalty. One of them, Ms. Carmen Hayes, confessed one day that her daughter hadn't spoken to her for 3 years because she had refused to sell her house to her at a low price. Another, Miss Diane Trevino, told how her son had forged her signature to take out a loan. I wasn't alone in this. There was a whole world of betrayed mothers who had learned to rebuild. My bank account remained intact. My $83,400 were safe, slowly growing with interest. Sometimes I looked at the passbook and felt a mixture of pride and sadness. Pride for having been strong enough to protect it, Sadness because it had cost much more than 42 years of work. It had cost me my son, but I was learning to live with that loss just as one learns to live with a scar. It never completely disappears, but with time, it hurts less. One spring afternoon, while watering the plants in my garden, I saw a familiar car parked in the distance. It was Jalen's car. My heart sped up for a moment, but the car just stayed there with no one getting out. I continued watering my plants, pretending I hadn't seen it. After a few minutes, the car started and drove away. I don't know what he was looking for. Maybe the courage to knock on my door. Maybe he just wanted to see if I was still alive. Maybe he hoped to see me weak, repentant, needing him. But what he saw was a calm woman, tending her garden, living her life in peace. And he left. I didn't see him again after that. At night, when the house was silent, I sometimes thought about how things had ended. I thought about that moment in the early morning when I first heard him planning to rob me, about that smile that appeared on my face, about those 50 minutes of preparation that changed everything. Because those 50 minutes weren't just about protecting my money. They were about reclaiming my dignity, about reminding myself that I still had value, that my life hadn't ended just because I was older, that I could still make decisions, that I could still defend myself. Dr. Carter had told me on my last visit that I was healthier than I had been a year ago, that the tension I had been living with had left my body, visible in my blood pressure, my posture, my improved appearance. Alara, you look at peace. And he was right. I was at peace. One morning I received a letter. It had no return address. I opened it curiously and found 3 $100 bills inside. Nothing else. No note. No explanation. But I understood the message. It was from Jalen. It was his way of saying he had paid me back something. Of all the thousands I had loaned him over the years, $300. That was probably all he had left over after continuing to live the way he lived. I put those 3 bills in an envelope and placed them at the bottom of my drawer, not as a treasure, but as a reminder that I had done the right thing, a reminder that true love cannot be bought or sold. On Sundays after service, I would stay for a while in the church atrium. I would chat with other women. We shared neighborhood news. One of them asked me about Jalen one day. I haven't seen him with you in a while, Alara. How is your son? He's living his life, I replied with a calm smile. And I'm living mine. I didn't say anything more. It wasn't necessary. One afternoon, while drinking coffee in my favorite armchair, I looked around my house. The curtains I had sewn myself, the plants growing healthy, the clean, orderly furniture, everything in its place, everything in peace. And I realized something important. For years, I had believed that my purpose was to be a mother, that my worth was in what I could give to my son, that my life had meaning only if Jalen needed me. But I was wrong. My purpose was simply to live with dignity, to live in peace, to live faithfully to myself. I didn't need anyone to validate me. I didn't need anyone to tell me I was worthwhile. I knew I was. I had proven it by defending myself, by protecting what was mine, by choosing my well-being over guilt. The sun was setting when I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The air smelled of jasmine from the garden. I could hear the birds saying goodbye to the day, and I smiled. The same smile as that night. The smile of someone who knows they made the right decision. The smile of someone who chose to live free instead of living chained by false obligations. 3 cents were left in that old account Jalen tried to empty. 3 cents that meant nothing to him, but to me, they meant everything. Because it wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about respect, about dignity, about not allowing anyone, not even your own blood, to strip you of what took a lifetime to build. I opened my eyes and watched the sky turn orange. It was a beautiful sunset, like many I had seen in my life, but this one felt different. It felt like the beginning of something new. I got up, went to the kitchen, and prepared a simple dinner. Hot soup and freshly bought bread. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, appreciating every moment of peace. Afterward, I washed the dishes, carefully dried everything, and put every item back in its place. My usual routine, but now Every action had a different meaning. It was an act of self-love, a reminder that caring for myself was not selfishness. It was survival. I went to bed early that night. I lay down in my clean bed with sheets that smelled of lavender. I closed my eyes without fear, without anxiety, without listening for voices behind the walls planning to dispossess me. Only silence. The blessed silence of peace regained. And as I drifted off to sleep, I thought of all the women like me, all the mothers, grandmothers, and aunts who had been manipulated, threatened, and dispossessed by their own families, all those who had had to choose between their well-being and guilt. And I wish that all of them would find the strength that I found, that they would all realize that protecting themselves is not betrayal, that saying no is an act of self-love, that true family does not steal, does not manipulate, does not threaten. True family respects, cares for, and loves unconditionally. And if your blood doesn't do that, then you have every right to walk away, to protect yourself, to live in peace. Because at the end of the day, when you close your eyes at night, the only thing that matters is being able to sleep with a clear conscience. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.